Right. Okay, log loss. So why the see log loss is very much useful when your model is predicting probability. So in the log loss is, you can say, the main loss function of your logistic regression, because your logistic regression is predicting the probability of your class label, and by default it predict the probability of class 1. See, there are two methods of logistic regression. One, we are learning that y into wt xi plus b, it's nothing but the plus 1 and minus 1. Your y is nothing but plus 1 and minus 1 class. Then we are using the different, you can say, log loss function. There also we are using the log, but the loss function is, you can say, different, because y belongs to 1 and minus 1. This is like very confusing thing. And in most of the time, I have seen that logistic regression is used with this, because in our assignment we are using 1 and 0, not 1 and minus 1. But it is really easy to understand, because this is probabilistic approach of the logistic regression, right? And this is used very much. But to understand like how logistic regression is working geometrically, if you take 1 and minus 1, then it is very, you can say, easy to understand geometry wise, right, intuitively. So let's start like what log loss is. So log loss is defined something like this: average over, and we are taking this negative, huh? So negative yi log pi, negative 1 minus vi log 1 minus pi, right? So negative is there. Why negative is there, we will just see it now. So log loss is defined something like this. Just a second. Huh. Okay, so like my yi can take either 1 or 0, right? So if my yi equal to, let's say, 1, then this term would be 0. Don't put the probability or anything. This term would be 1 minus 1 would be 0. 0 multiplied by this would be 0, right? So only this would be there. Now yi equal to 1, so 1 multiplied by log pi. So the final error is nothing but minus log pi in case yi equal to 1. In case yi equal to 1, my final error is nothing but minus log pi. And when yi equal to 0, this term would be 0. 0 multiplied by this term would be 0. 1 minus 0 is nothing but 1. So 1 multiplied by log minus 1 pi. So whatever the probability that you are saying, right? 1 minus log of 1 minus that probability. Let's take one intuitive example. So if my y equal to 1, if my y equal to 1 here, here and here, what should be the probability of my model? It should be as high as possible, right? 0 to 1. So it should be like point 0.8, point 0.9, point 0.95. It is good, right? Because this y prediction is nothing but the probability of class label 1 or positive class. So if my value of y is 1, that means positive class, this probability value should be higher and higher, right? So higher the value, what is the law? What is the loss? Log pi, because this would be 1 into this and this would be 0. So log pi. So higher the value of log would be. Agree? Log is a monotonic function. And now I am taking minus. So the value will decrease because I am putting minus. Minus 5 is less than minus 4, like this. So higher the log pi value, higher the sorry, the lowest the minus log pi would be, right? So this value is very low, minus 0.04, right? Minus 0.04. Now I here I have minus 1.5, here I have minus 0.09, correct? So higher this value, higher, you can say this value, what you call this 0, the higher the probability, less the loss would be, correct? Now what I am doing is, now the next step is, when y equal to 0, then the probability should be as low as possible. So I am taking 1 minus pi, right? So higher this pi would be, lower this term would be, and lower the log would be, correct? And lower this how whole term would be, if I put minus it would be reverse order, right? So if I have point 0.1, then the loss is, you can say, minimal. If I say point 0.2, loss is higher. Point 0.3 loss is again higher, like this, correct? Negative loss. And then after taking all this loss, this is the actual log value. If I take the negative value, then 4 is less than 9 is less than 15. I guess you understand the idea, right? So what log loss is doing, like if the label is nothing but belongs to 0, then the probability should be as low as possible, nearly equal to 0, right? For point 1 it is saying 4, 0.04 loss, point 2 0.09, point 3 0.15, correct? And if the class label is 1 for positive class, the probability should be as high as possible, right? So the minimum loss for point 0.9, then point 0.8, then point 0.7, like this, correct? I guess now you understand like why the log loss is like very useful, and how why it is defined something like this, and why we are taking the minus term, correct? So this is log loss, this is we how we can calculate this, and this is useful in like one of the numerical also. We are calculating that what you call that, one question is there, I just forgot about that, one function is there, e to the when we use that, I guess it's PDF naive bias, Gaussian naive bias, I believe. I am not sure, but there are like there is some instance where we are using this log loss function. Okay. Next is nothing but the R squared or coefficient of determination, right? So what R squared is, it is like if you have like a regression model or regression problem. So this though the you can say the most easiest solution would be just use the average value, right? If I tell you like these are the income of the people, 1,000 people. Now you tell me like this is new people, 1,001. What would be the income? What you will do, the simplest is nothing but take the average. So then the income of the new, you can say, person would be average of all the 1,000 people. So this is the, you can say, very simplest model. Just give me a second. Correct. But our target is not to do that, right? Because like if we need to use the mean model, then why machine learning, right? So given regression model, what we are doing is we are comparing the performance of your regression problem with the average model, right? So SS total is defined on this thing, mean, or you can say average model, right? Average model, that it's nothing but it will predict all the values average of independent variable, right? Just a second. And what is SS residual? So SS residual is nothing but all the error that your model is doing, right? So y bar is nothing but the average value or mean value of yi, and y hat is nothing but the predicted value of yi, predicted value like by the your model, machine learning model. So yi minus y bar is nothing but the error that your average model is making, and yi minus y hat is nothing but the error that your machine learning model is making, right? Now we need to compare this thing, SS residual and SS total. So how it is defined is 1 minus SS residual divided by SS total, right? If your model is no good, like it is also doing some you can say hack, and it is also predicting mean value, every time it is predicting mean value, right? Dumb model, that your SS residual and SS total would be 1 1, right? The ratio would be, you can say, 1 SS residual equal to SS total. So this will cancel out, and I will have 1. So 1 minus 1 equal to 0. So if your R squared, not error, R squared value or COD value is 0, that means your model is same as the average model or mean model. Right? What is mean model? For any given input, I will predict mean of all yi, all the dependent variable. Yi is dependent variable, right? That you need to predict. Now let's take one more example. If your residual error is very low, right, less than SS total, then what will happen? This value would be less than 1, right? The ratio SS residual divided by SS total will be less than 1, because SS residual is less than SS total. It's something like this, 2 by 3, right? 4 by 15. So it is always less than 1. So 0 to 1, correct? So your R square value would be 1 minus 0 to 1. So it's nothing but 0 to 1 only. So your R square value, R2 value would be from 0 to 1. So 0 being the bad and 1 being the good, right? 1 means your residual error is 0. Let's say you're not making any error, overfitting model. So 0 divided by anything is nothing but 0. So 1 minus 0 is 1. So R square is nothing but 100%. right? So less the value of SS residual, the R square value would be higher, correct? Now, case 3, let's take case 3. Model is dumb and the residual is same as total error. That mean model, right? Then R2 would be 0. Now, case 4, that your model is crazy. It is like predicting all the value very wrong. It is making very much like very big mistake compared to mean model. So your residual error is higher than your this model. Let's say you are making 50 error, right? Square, average of square like this. Not average, but square. All the square is coming 50. And your mean model was making just, let's say, 5. So 1 minus 10, it would be minus 9. So if you are getting minus value of R square, your model is worst, right? It is not good as also average model, right? Better to use the average model in this case, right? Throw it away. Simple. Correct. Any questions, guys? I guess these things are, you can say, very straightforward, nothing very fancy or theory. Uh, let's take like now we want to, you can say, see like how your model is doing, how your model is performing, right? Are you recording the session? I guess yes, yes. Now after like having the model, it's not possible that you make no error, right? You would be making small error, and you can also, you are also good with the small errors, right? If you're not making very big mistakes, small errors, 0.01 or 0.1, it's fine, right? So how to find out like how much error you are making, right? Because like you will have like thousands of data, millions of data, so you cannot go one by one. So will you take mean average of error? No, because like if you have outlier, then it is impacted very much. So if you have outlier, just take the median, right? And if you want to say like the deviation, how your error is deviating from the mean, just take the median absolute deviation. So just find out for all the points. You have like 1,000 data points, 100 data points. Just calculate error 1, error 2, error 3 like this. Sort them in the ascending order and find out what the median is. So now you know like what MAD is, right? Median absolute deviation. Calculate the deviation, error minus median, and whatever the value you get, all the deviation, that 100 deviation, just take the median of those deviation. So it's called median absolute deviation of error, right? That way you know like how much median, or you can say average error your model is making. Average we cannot say, but median error that you are making. And if you calculate MAD, then you know like how your error is like deviating from the mean. So what is the range basically, right? This is very important, this distribution of error. Now can anyone please answer that if I have PDF something like this, let's say something like this, right? This is nothing but 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 50. So this is good or bad? This is PDF of my error, like whatever the error I'm looking. Correct, because like most of the you can say this thing are like error value are very much higher, right? So what you want to do is like your error should be concentrated around near to 0, something like this. If you are getting a PDF looking like this, then well, it's good, right? Because most of the error, you can say 80% of the error are around 0, right? 0 or 1, correct? So it's good. So how the CDF will look like? So if I have CDF something like this, let's say something like this, then, and one more PDF I have something like this, and third PDF, let's say I have something like this. So which one is good? First one. This one, right? One, two, three. First one, correct? Because like your most of the error, if you take this 90% value on your PDF, CDF, sorry, then your 90% error are less than equal to 1. If for this it is nothing but less than or equal to 5, for this it is less than or equal to 50, right? So first one is very good because like your most of the error are very much you can say very low, less than 5 basically, nine more than 90%, right? 95%. So you want some CDF like this, not ASCII or something like that, right? And this should look like a power law or very skewed log normal distribution, right? Very high sigma. If you remember if you take the mu equal to 0 and very high sigma, your log graph would look something like this. right? Log normal basically. Okay, so with that we finish this PDF, like data handling. Sorry, this confusion matrix ROCAC, like that model performance basically. Now let's take the next, or very you can say interesting thing, that some specific situations in machine learning life cycle, right? And basically more, it is more related to data preparation thing. So, like first and foremost is nothing but how to deal with the imbalanced data set. Right? It is possible that you don't have, like you have like very much value from the class A and very less value of class B, rare disease or machine failure case, or any real value, real like fraud detection also, right? Out of thousand transaction, one or two are fraud. So how will you handle that? Right, so imbalanced data set, then we will see, like if you have the model that can do just binary classification, logistic regression, or SVM, then how can you extend it up to multi-class classification? How to deal with missing values, nulls and all of this stuff, right? You don't have the data basically for particular features. How to handle this ordinal feature or categorical feature, right? Impact of scale, and how standardization is used, like that. Correct. Let's start with the small, this like you can say easy topics. First is nothing but the imbalanced data set. So there are basically three you can say methods, remedies that you can apply for the imbalanced data set. One is undersampling, not good technique. What we are doing is, let's say I have data set like 300 to 100, class A is 300, class B is 100. Randomly I will take 100 point out of class A and I will do the training. This is not good, right? Because you are wasting 200 points out of class A. Right, so what oversampling is, out of this 100 point, just like take random like batches of 50, let's say 6 times 50 50 50, you can say random point, or just repeat the data point. So it is same as class weight, right? So class weight is nothing but, if I'm let's say encountering 1 point of class B, I will count as 3, right? So 1 point of class B is equal to 3 point of class B, right? So this is nothing but class weight, right? So it would be counted thrice, correct? So that way you can apply the class weights. This oversampling, there are like so many methods to do the oversampling. You can also generate the pseudo points also, right? Between like those area in that cluster, right? So undersampling, oversampling, and having the class weight, these three are, you can say, simple method to deal with the imbalanced data set. What about the multi-class classification? See, KNN can work with the multi-class classification. There is no problem, right? Just take the majority vote of the K neighbors. But let's say you are doing the simple SVM or logistic regression, then what you'll do? So then we apply one versus rest method, OVR, right? In scikit it's called OVR maybe, right? So what one versus rest method is, let's say I have 5 class. So what I'll do, I will take class 1, rest every class 2, 3, 4, 5 as the one class. Right? So doing this, I will identify if this point belongs to class 1 or not. Right? Let's take the worst case that it doesn't belong to class 1, it belongs to this class. What is the meaning of this class? C2, C3, C4 and C5. So just again do C2 multiplied by rest of the class. Then C3 multiplied by rest of the class. So at some point you will identify like which category or which class your query point is, right? So this is nothing but the one versus rest method, right? Very simple hack, that if logistic regression or SVM can't perform multi-class classification, then you just use the single class or uniclass classification, and just apply one by one, taking one class at a time. Right, so this is nothing but the multi-class classification, one versus rest method. Okay, missing value. Right, so there are so many, you can say, technique to deal with the missing value. If it is simple regression problem, right, or in regression problem, or your feature are nothing but the numerical feature, you can either take mean, median, or mode of that column, and you can say do that. imputation, right? Replace null with the mean value or median value or mode value, depends on the problem. In a classification problem, let's say I have this categorical data. I should have written numerical features, categorical feature, ordinal features, like that. So let's say I have this classification, or let's say this thing. In classification problem, what I can do is, if the feature is missing, let's say this is classification problem and this feature is missing, right? Now, given the feature there where it is missing, what I can do is, don't take the mean of everything, every like whole column, right? The total column, don't take the mean. What first I'll do, I will say, like, okay, this none is missing. What is its class? Class is 1. Okay, now let's see, like, how many are from class 1, right? So this is from class 1, this is from class 1. Just take the average of these two. Don't touch 14, don't touch 10, and don't touch 15. Why? Because this particular point is belong to class 1, belongs to class 1, right? This feature. Then why should you consider the other class points, right? It doesn't make sense. If it's classification problem, then you can use this hack, right? Just take the mean or median or mode or even simple any other imputation method for that class only, whatever the class that point belongs to. Just consider the points, or you can say feature value of the same class. So if it is 1, just consider 9 and 12 and compute the median, right? But if, let's say, it was a regression problem, then what you will do? 3, 3.54, it's not possible, right? So then you will consider the, like, rest of all the value of your column to calculate the mean or median or mode, right? I guess in this case I have used mean, maybe. I need to say that I guess we are using mean. It looks like mean. Okay, so the next is nothing but the model based imputation. So what model based imputation is, what I'll do, let's say this is missing, right? This value is missing. So rather than using this average method that take the summation divided by total number of rows, what I'll do, I will consider all rest of the column, use some machine learning model, right? And this would be nothing but my target variable, dependent variable. So this would be nothing but y that I would be predicting, right? Now, for this missing value, predict y hat using some model, right? Neural network model, deep learning model, any simple machine learning model, logistic regression, anything, linear regression, svm or svr, anything. Just use that and predict this value, right? Finding the so what we are doing is, for the rest of the data, we are finding some pattern for this column, and then try to predict this missing value, right? This is like, if you have like plenty of time, year of time, then you can do this, right? Because you need to do this machine learning model for each column where the data is missing, correct? Using like rest of the column, you can say, just train your machine learning model and try to predict the missing value. Okay, so these three are the method. If simple regression problem and numerical column you have, then just use mean, median, or mode, or any, you can say, central tendency, that statistic measure. If it is simple classification problem, and let's say, in classification problem, if numerical column is missing, then you just take that average of same class, you can say, value, not all the value of column, like all the value available in this column, right? Model based imputation for a given column, the this missing data is, you can say, predicted by the machine learning model, which is trained on the rest of the data, right? Now, there is one, you can say, observation in machine learning, that sometimes this missing data is some kind of a information. That's some kind of a information. Let's say we are taking survey, and in that there is a gender column, and it's optional, right? So sometimes you will have male, female, or sometimes you will have null, right? Some male, female, or other, or sometimes you will simply have null, right? That person is not ready to disclose the information, right? It's null, but it is some kind of information, right? That is like it's possible that's you can say particular type of a category, some introvert or some kind of a disease is there, right? That I'm just making out me like this example, nothing else, just putting the example. But it's possible that if the data is missing, right, then some type of information, some useful information is there, that this data is missing here, like for this particular observation. So there is, it is possible that there is some information there, or some, you can say, special type of case is happening, right? You may observe that due to some error or some bug, due to data transmission, we are not able to get this data. So if you perform simple imputation, then you will lost that you lose that information. So what we will do, we will preserve that information. How? So for this four column, let's say for this four column we are performing the imputation, so all this missing value would be replaced by mean, right? So if I give you this data f1 f2 f3 f4, you don't know like which value was missing, right? At which row which value was missing. So along with this data I will provide you this thing, this one more table, right? Both table are similar, same table, but I will give four more, you can say, column, and this column is representing if the data was missing or not. So if it was not missing, 0 0 0; if it is missing, 1. So like one way or other way we are preserving this information, that if the data was missing or not, right? So this is the whole idea behind the imputation. Any doubt, guys? I guess we have one more method, I guess. Okay, here it will come. This categorical and ordinal feature. And any doubt in imputation, I guess it's easy, and we have that in sklearn. In pre-processing, I guess it's there, this imputation. Simple imputer we need to use. Function is simple imputer. Categorical or ordinal feature. So what the categorical and what ordinal features means. So if you have something like a categorical category data, country, gender, or color, any kind of that, right? Or the rating, not in 1 2 3 4 5, very good, good, average, poor, very poor, pathetic, like that. So it's called the categorical or ordinal feature, other than numerical feature, basically. Now, let's say I have this kind of a data. So first and very useful method is one hot encoding. If you have less number of categories, then and only you can use this one hot encoding. So what one hot encoding is doing, it will convert your feature into some kind of a binary number, right? And the length of the that binary, so binary vector basically of size equal to number of categories. So what it will do, let's have this kind of a data. So how many unique category I have in feature 4? So it's nothing but t-shirt size, let's say, or shirt size. Small, medium, large, or XL, I have just 4 category, right? So the binary vector would be of size 4, right? So if it is small, then it will look something like this: 10000, right? So if it is small, first digit would be 1, then other 3 would be 0. Medium would be 0100, large would be 0010, and XL would be 0001. And it will look something like this in data set. So I will have F1, F2, F3, F4. You can drop this column, right? Because it is now not useful. This data is preserved in 4 column, because I have 4 different category. So if it is small, small would be 1, medium, large, and XL would be 0 by default. If it is medium, F4 underscore M would be 1, rest would be 0. So on and so forth. Right? But the problem is, let's say you have country column, and there are like 150 or 200 odd countries. Then what will happen? If you apply one hot encoding, you will have 150 more features, right? 150 more column, and it's nothing but dimension. So your dimensionality would increase, right? So what you will do, like in that case, we will use the domain knowledge. Let's first understand this mean replacement. So what this mean replacement will do? Okay, well, in this also we can example, we can also apply mean replacement. What we will do in mean replacement is, let's say like there is country column and 150 countries are there. One hot encoding or OH is not a option. So what we'll do? we have, let's say, one yi, or you can say dependent variable, that I need to predict. Let's take our old example, income of a person. So 20k, 30k, 40k, 60k, like that. So what I'll do, I will take one country, let's say Sweden, and I will find out like how much salary is there. So sorry, country income is there, and just take the mean of all the salary, and replace whenever I have Sweden, I will replace with the average income of Sweden. For all the country I can do that. Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sweden, or that any Netherlands, or any countries, right? So for this 150 countries value would be replaced by the average value of dependent variable, so it's called the mean replacement. And then this makes sense also, because if doesn't make sense, then it's there is no, you can say, use of using this mean replacement, because your country column should be like in some way it should be correlated to your dependent variable. It could be income, it could be anything, right? Insurance or anything, amount or anything, correct. And I guess this is not possible if you have that classification problem, because in classification problem, how will you do the min replacement? Then you need to use like a labeling method. You can use also that India equal to 1, then some China equal to 2, like that, Afghanistan 3. You can do that also, but there is one problem in that. It's nothing but 1 is greater than 2 is greater, sorry, 1 is less than 2 is less than 3. There is some, you can say, relationship, right? So we can't give these numbers. And see, if you have, let's say, color, some column, and there are colors, red, pink, purple, blue, like that, green. So if you say red equal to 1, green equal to 3, so 3 is greater than 1, but green is not greater than red, right? Because there is no kind of a, you can say, one to one connection, right? So it is not like it labeling method is very not, you can say, useful, because machine learning model will got confused, right? It will understand this value is higher, this value is lower, so it is no impact like that. And the last one method that we use is nothing but the domain knowledge. Let's say we have classification problem, and classification problem that tsunami will happen or not, 1 or 0, like that. So, or temperature, let's say we are classifying high, medium, and low. Now let's say again we have same problem, 150 different countries are there, and our task is to predict the temperature, temporary value of a temperature or category of a temperature, right? Regression or classification, doesn't matter. Now how this domain knowledge can be useful, right? So this is like one assumption that we are making. I am not the domain expert. Let's say using domain expertise, it is known fact that temperature is dependent on the distance of the country from equator, right? If country is on equator, then it is high chance that the average temperature would be high, right? Because sun would be very near, like the sun rays would be very straight, right? So if you go like away and away from equator, Russia, Antarctica, like that, then the temperature will fall down at Canada and like that. So using this domain expertise, you know, like there is some relationship between the distance from the equator and the temperature. Then what you can do, replace all the country value with the distance of that country from the equator. You can do that, correct? Because this distance from the equator has the direct impact on the temperature, so you can do this. But this is only possible when you use this domain knowledge, right? So using domain knowledge, you can also convert your categorical feature into numerical feature, right? Very interesting. And this comes with, you can say, you need to, you like have that, what you call that, SD, or that domain matter, DME. What is that called? Domain matter expert or subject matter expert, right? SME something, I guess it's called, right? And what is the difference between categorical and ordinal feature? So if you have simple categorical feature like country or color, right, red, blue, or like that, or but and other way, like if you have this kind of categorical feature, small, medium, large, excel, or very good, good, poor, like this, average, right? Then if you think intuitively that there is like clear ordering, you can say, you can directly apply some number in the ordinal feature. So ordinal feature have the clear ordering of the categories, right? What is the order, or you can say the weight basically. So if I talk about S, M, L and XL, then there is no problem. If I say S equal to, let's say, 28, 24, medium is nothing but 32, I can assign the number, right? Large is nothing but, let's say, 34, and XL is nothing but, let's say, 38. I can do that, right? Because this, like, these two are like are very related. Small is less than medium is less than L is less than XL, but I can't say red is less than blue is less than green is less than purple, right? So if your categorical feature have some like very, you can say, ordering of the weight, then it's called the ordinal feature, right? And this ordinal feature is very easy to deal with. Just apply the number, simple. Replace very good with 5, good with 4, average with 3, bad with 2, very bad with 1, pathetic with minus 1, right? So it is really easy if you have ordinal features. So these two are the categorical and ordinal feature, right? Any doubt, guys, in this method, one hot encoding, min replacement, and using the domain knowledge? Any questions? I'm watching the chat also.
Mayur, if we have year as a categorical feature, how to convert them? Like year 1900, 1920.
Okay.
I think that depends on the problem, right?
Okay. Year you can have it as it is. No, what's the problem?
I mean, yes,
It's number
about
only, right? Year is
number, but I have seen this example. Yeah. So, Sudhir, for that you can do one thing. You can create bins. Like let's say for every 10 years, you can say one bin and create like let's say 10 bins, something like that. You can do that. Okay. That might help. And yeah, for that you can also use decision trees to get those bins. Or you can manually come up with bins, or you can use decision trees to know like how many bins you.
okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I understand correctly, it's something like this, right? 1992 or like 2000. If it is in that category, just put one, otherwise zero,
Yeah.
like this, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Like depends
2000 to
upon.
2010. Okay, this is very
Yeah.
cool, right?
So maybe like 10 years, 5 years, 15 years,
Correct, correct.
based on the problem that you're solving. You can come up
That
with
makes
the bins.
sense. Yes.
If you don't know like what should be the bin size, then you can use that decision trees to come up with the bins.
Yes. Good question. Yes. Thanks, Dhiriteja. Cool. Uh, next problem that we have is nothing but the different scale. That this, like this, guys, we have like discussed like probably 10 times. Like if you have different scale, then it will directly impact, you can say, distance basically. So let's say one feature is like in range 0 to 5, another feature is from range 1000 to 5000, right? So if there is like very small change in the feature 1, then if you measure the distance, then it won't reflect. Let's say it goes from 1 to 2 or 1 to 3, feature 1, right? There is very drastic change if the scale is 1 to 5, and if the value goes from 2 to 4, it's nothing but double, right? But if you compare with the other feature which is going from 1000 to, let's say, 5000, and if it is goes from 1050 to 2050, there is no very like very good, very high change, because it is going from 1000 to 50000, right? But and if you take, you can say, distance of this point and this point, it would be very less, right? It won't, you can say, reflect this change, drastic change basically. So whenever you have like your machine learning model, when you need to come like measure the distance, if your machine learning model is basically dependent on the distance measure, like logistic regression or SVM or like that, then you need to perform standardization, right? It is like assume that your data is normally distributed. So what standardization is doing, it is like convert, it is like converting, like given any distribution, if you take x minus mu by sigma, it is making like the mu equal to 0 and variance equal to 1, right? So given any crazy data, if you apply the standardization, then your mu would be 0 and sigma would be 1, or sigma square would be 1. Sigma would be minus 1 to plus 1. Correct? So this is called some say, like same as z value. So I won't spend much time here. Let's take this feature selection process. So this sounds very easy, but this needs like very you can say big experience to perform this kind of stuff. So there are like in feature selection we have two basic strategy: forward selection, or you can say backward elimination. So why feature selection is important? Because let's say you have number of features, 200 features, 300 features, but it's simply possible that all your features are not very useful. It has nothing to do with your dependent variable. Dependent variable, if I'm saying dependent variable, it can be number or category, like that. So regression or classification problem. So how to find out that out of 200 features, which 10 or which 15 or which 20 features, which k features are very important out of n? So what we will do in forward selection, what we will do, given 200 features, I will take first feature number one, and train the model like how much accuracy I'm getting, let's say, and feature two, then feature three. Then I will find out like which feature is very important, which feature is directly impacting my y, right? The highest accuracy which one is giving, or any other performance measure that you are taking. Then I will choose the feature, let's say 5 1, 5, like feature number 5 is having the highest impact on y. Then what I'll do, again I will take the combination with 5, 5 and 1, then 5 and 2, then 5 and 3, then 5 and 4, then 5 and 6, right? Not 5 and 5. Correct? Then again I will train the model with the pair of 2, right? Or you can say the combination of 2. Then let's say 5 and feature number 11 is giving me the highest accuracy, right? Let's say my accuracy now is 70. Again I will take the third feature, select for third, then select for fourth, select for 5, and like in my, you can say, beforehand I will decide that if I get the accuracy greater than 95, then I will stop. So let's say using 6 feature, 5, 11, 1, 3, 9, and 29, I'm getting accuracy greater than 95, then I can stop. So out of 200, I will use just 5 features, because even using by 5 features, definitely I'm getting the accuracy 95%. So I can throw away like rest of the features. Right? There is no problem in it. And because you add more and more feature, it will go up to 96, then 98, then 100, maybe overfitting case or anything. So if you are getting like this very, you can say, the most useful feature if you are using. And see, there is one like very, you can say, famous saying, garbage in garbage out. So you want to make sure that you are not using garbage, or you are not giving garbage to your machine learning model, right? So if 5 features are you can say sufficient, don't worry, just use 5 out of 200, no problem with it. Correct? Or just train like one or two different model. Let's say 5 features, different 5 features. If you're getting more than 95, and just use the stacking or that stacking or average model, like that. Correct? Uh, what is backward elimination? So it's the opposite of forward selection. So what we are doing is, what we will do, I will take all the 200 features, right? 200 features. Now what I'll do, for these 200 features, I will train the model, right? So whatever the accuracy I get, I will note it down. Let's say I get the high accuracy, 99 or something like that. Now what I'll do, I will remove the feature one by one. Remove feature one and see like what is the impact on the accuracy. Feature 2, remove the feature 2, and like see what is the impact on accuracy, huh? Or r square, or any measure you are using. Now let's say if I remove feature 53 and there is no change in accuracy, it remains 99, or just change is 0.0001, that means this feature is not important, right? I can remove that because it doesn't affect my accuracy much. I will remove 53. Then what I'll do? Again, I will do the same process. Remove 1, remove 2, remove 3. Let's say removing 46 doesn't impact much, right? Then I will remove 56. So similarly, I will perform this thing let's say after removing all this thing, and let's say I have next like last six features, and the accuracy is around 96, and if I remove one feature out of this, then the accuracy is like say about 89 or 90, 85, like this. So I can stop, right? Because further I cannot remove any feature out of six. Right, out of six, I'm done. Like if I remove any one of the feature, the accuracy is like less than 95, so I need to stop the process, right? All the execution basically, right? So this is kind of a dictatorship, and this is kind of you can say this thing, what do you call that, democracy. Correct. So these two are very, you can say, popular method in the feature selection, forward selection or backward elimination. Correct. Forward selection, just choose, you can say, heroes, and backward elimination, just remove one by one all the villains, like who are not doing the work. Correct.
So,
Very
so we have
yes.
to use we have to check multi-collinearity before using these techniques, or is it fine?
Multi-collinearity. Na, I guess we need to check like before starting any type of, you can say, work, because that's dangerous, right? Because uh, some features are like dependent on each other. Like there is collinearity, so definitely you need to remove that. Check that basically. So I
If I'm
am not
not
sure
wrong,
like if we need to do that before this feature selection. Uh, is that so? Honestly, I don't know.
I think when I don't know the function, what function we use for feature selection, but I think when we call the function, the library internally checks multi-collinearity. There are some X as code.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
also not sure.
sure. I guess that multicollinearity was introduced on that thing, that in linear regression and logistic regression, right? Because these weights will
Feature
make no
import.
sense. That W1 and W2 will make no sense, basically. Right? We will see that case. Like if there is like if two features are very like having some linearity, so like yeah, whatever the value of W or weights you are getting, you cannot use that for the feature importance, right? So this feature selection and fi, that feature importance, is different thing. So in feature importance you cannot use the value of W or weights in logistic or linear regression, right? If like there is multi-collinearity, we will see that. I guess you are confusing between these things, but I'm not sure if we need to check before feature selection, but before feature
Yeah.
importance definitely we need to check. uh, what is this train test set difference? So see, this all will sound like a theory, but believe me, like my first model that I was trying to build just a month ago, that fish classification, I had this problem basically. Right. So what was happening there is like I had very small data set, just 160 points. So if I have like if I split randomly, then it's possible that some types of fish was there in train and it was not there in test. So my model was making all the mistake for for that fish classification, like, or sorry, fish type, right? So what this train test set difference is like, and say it is a, you can say, ground rule for the machine learning model, that whatever the pattern you are seeing in the train data set, it should be there in test data set, because you are learning all your pattern, or see, all the models are learning some kind of a pattern using that margin maximize classification, or that log loss or hinge loss, anything. But they are understanding some pattern. Even in decision tree it is understanding some pattern. So in test data set, if every rule change, right, after corona every rule will change, right? The number of vehicles on the road, number of phone calls will made, number of data we will use, every data point will change, right? So all, like there were like two or three times it was discussed, right? If all the models were was like trained on some trained data set, right? Some data set which is normally like which is normally you will expect that behavior. But in test data set, or in this scenario, if it is very opposite, right? So if your trained data set is something somewhere here in you can say universe, and test data set is somewhere here, then definitely any model on the earth will fail. because it is learning some pattern from here and here, right? And now you are asking to perform like predict on this data set. How it is possible, right? If you ask this point, then yes, it will be able to, you can say, predict or this point or this point, right? So how to check if there is like a difference between train and test data set, right? They should be basically overlapping. So how can you check that? Can you plot train and test dataset? Yes, if it is 2D, just plot train dataset and test dataset on each other, right? If they are like overlapping something like this, then yes, good. We can go ahead with the training. And something like this, then bad, right? Because my train dataset is falling somewhere here and test dataset is falling somewhere here. But what happen if I have 5D or even let's say 4D dataset, just four features I have, not very small example I'm taking. We have mostly 50 or 100 features. Then what you will do? Can you plot it? No. Disney is one option, but you cannot rely on it because global and local, there is some like limitation of Disney also. Global information it doesn't preserve. Local information it only preserve, right? So one very engineering hack, what we will do, we will take the train data set, label them as let's say 1, and take the test data set and label them as let's say 0. Now what I'll do, I will take classification problem, classification algorithm, right? So see, what we are predicting is train, if it is from train or if it is from test data set. Now I will use either KNN, SVM, logistic regression, or any other classification problem that even I don't know the name. Then if that model is having the accuracy 90% or let's say 95%, then what is the meaning? Is it is good or bad? Anyone? If my classification model is able to classify my train data set and test data set very
It's bad.
easily,
It's bad.
it is bad, right? Because your train and test data set is not overlapping each other, correct? So if your classification problem is having higher accuracy, you need to again random split train and test, right? If it is like average case, then you can go with it or try to improve it. And if your logistic regression or KNN is just having accuracy, let's say 5%, then it's valuable, right? It's good. Only 5% data set is like not overlapping. 95% time it is overlapping. Now you can go with your task basically. It could be regression, classification, or anything. Clustering, and clustering, I guess we don't have this thing. Any you can say machine learning model. Now you can go ahead, right? So this is very confusing that your machine learning model is having the less accuracy and now you are doing the task. So that machine learning model is just useful. Classification machine learning model is just like we are using to find out if we have difference between train and test data set, right? Nothing else. If there is no difference, then the accuracy would be just 5% of that classification model. Now I can go with this train data set and you can say perform the training, or you can say modeling, train the model basically, not modeling, train the model, right? So this is nothing but the train test set difference. What is interpretability of a model versus black box, right? So this every case, like each case we will see in all the algorithm basically, if logistic regression is interpretable or not, if decision tree is interpretable or not, RBF kernel is it interpretable or not. So what I mean by interpretability or model of or versus black box. So given you can say any machine learning model, if you can justify like why this output, if I'm saying the income is let's say 100 sorry 20,000 for this person, right? For this person the income is 20,000. Now if you can give the reasoning that like his term insurance is very high, his credit score is very high, bank like average bank balance last 5 years is very high. If your model can give this kind of a you can say reasoning, right? Then you can tell that it's interpretable model. So it's called the interpretability of a model. And what is black box model? You give the input, it will give you the output. This is you can say this person has the cancer. Now, if you ask the model why, which feature, like due to which feature you are saying that, which reason, if it doesn't justify, or you can say it doesn't say like due to this feature or due to this data point or due to this neighbor data point, that this like this result, like this is the result, then it's nothing but the black box model. You just give input, you get output, you don't know like what is happening inside the model. Or it is does it doesn't give the, you can say, important feature, right? Or which feature causes this output value, right, of dependent variable. So it's called the black box model. uh, I guess in RBF kernel or in SVM mostly it's like black box. If you're using SVM or something, it is mostly black box model. There are some hack, but mostly it's black box model, right? Because it is like taking all your feature into higher dimension, 500,000 dimension, and try to find out something that RBF kernel or anything. So it's mostly black box model. You cannot, you can say, interpret that, right? Very important topic. These two topics are very important. This thing, bias variance trade-off. Yesterday, I guess we discussed this, and outlier detection. Okay, 10:30 already. Okay, we are good. So what's bias variance trade-off is, so your generalization error or generalized error is nothing but the error that you are making due to bias, some variance. So it's bias square basically, variance and irreducible error that you cannot reduce due to some outlier or some point, right? So if you overfit, then this would be zero, but this error you cannot reduce basically, right? So in case of underfitting, what will happen is your bias would be very high, but your variance would be very low. Right? Yesterday we saw like in underfitting, your bias would be very high. In k equal to, let's say you take number of data point, then all point would be classified as the majority of point, like whatever the majority of class basically. If class A is in majority, all your point would be class A. So it's very high bias. You are biased to some class, right? But there is no variance. It doesn't vary, right? Whatever the changes you make, whatever the like distance you, whatever the, you can say, point you move in the space, it doesn't matter, right? All query point would be red, because red or class A basically. So class A is in nothing but in majority, so high bias but low variance. So if I, let's say, now reduce my k equal to 1, then what will happen? It would be high variance. So it will try to take all the value. It would be something like this, something like this. Boundary will look something like this, not very smooth in KNN. In case of regression, it will do something like this. It will try to get every point. High variance. So due to small change in input, your model will change drastically. So it's nothing but the variance, high variance, low bias. It is nothing like no bias with anyone. Outlier, welcome. I will go there to take that outlier, no problem. Low bias, high variance. And there is some, you can say, irreducible error that we need to add. So if you add everything, you will get this graph, this black graph. This graph, just a second, on this graph. So it is total error. So if you go here, to variance would be high, bias would be low, so your total error would be high. Here bias would be high, variance would be low. So you need to find this sweet spot, not this one, because we are also adding some error value also. So this would be my sweet spot, that is nothing but the best fit or minimum error that I'm making. And see, this is nothing but the model complexity. If you observe on this x-axis, I have model complexity, right? So as the model complexity increases, variance increases, bias decreases. Model complexity decreases. That means k equal to 1,000 or number of data point. So my bias would be very high, but variance would be very low. So total error would be high. So it's nothing but the underfitting, and this is nothing but the overfitting case. Correct. So this graph is very useful to understand this underfitting, overfitting kind of a thing. Okay. Topic of a day: outlier detection. LOF, LRD, RD. Right. So the in the formula of local outlier factor, I'm using local reachability density. Right. So we need to understand what is LRD then. So in local reachability density, we are using the formula of Yes, I need to change this. This is again wrong. I didn't get time to change this. Note to myself, I need to change this. Okay. So local reachability density. So local reachability density, it is using formula of LR, reachability density, right? This is wrong. So reachability density. So what is reachability density? So it is using formula of k distance. So what is k distance? Okay, so let's start with in the reverse order now. So k distance is nothing but distance of kth neighbor. So first neighbor is nothing but the nearest point, then second neighbor, then third neighbor, then fourth neighbor, and five. Right? Why the fifth neighbor is the like at the like I'm taking at the, you can say, highest distance? Because if I take k equal to one, you won't take this one, right? You will take the nearest one, k equal to one. If I take k equal to two, then this two, three, then this three, 4, then this 4, then 5, then and only this would be included in the party for k equal to 5. So k distance, right? So k distance is defined as nothing but the distance of a point from the kth neighbor, right? And how reachability distance is defined, it's nothing but max of k distance of b, distance of a to b. So remember this, there was very like big confusion in one example. Reachability density from a to b, from a to b is defined as a to b. See, we are defined as a to b. A to b is defined as maximum of k distance of b, right? So we are going from a to b, so I need to check the k, or you can say neighbors k distance from the b basically, not from a. So reachability distance from a to b might be different from b to a also, right? So it's possible that reachability distance a to b is not equal to reachability distance b to a. Just remember that, right? Like this, if let's say b is in neighborhood, then it would be something like this. So reachability distance from a to b and b to a are different. So max distance of where we are going from a to b, we are going. So I need to find out the k distance of b. So this is k distance of b, and distance of a and b, maximum of these two. So which is like maximum, or you can say greater than this? So this is like greater than this, right? Distance of ab is greater than k5b. So reachability distance of a and b is nothing but distance of a and b in this case. But let's say the a point is already in the neighborhood, then what will happen? Then it will be defined as so this distance is less than this. So reachability dense distance of A to B is defined something like this: K5 of B, or K equal to 5. So K5, it's nothing but the distance of fifth neighbor of B, right? So reachability distance is nothing but some kind of a distance, right? Of from point A to point B. If it is in neighborhood, it's nothing but kth distance. If it is outside the neighborhood, it's nothing but the actual distance. Nothing fancy. Right? Now, what is density? So density is nothing but inverse of average distance, right? So density is nothing but one of average reciprocal of average distance, right? So as the distance increases, my density will decreases. This makes sense, right? If point are very far away from each other, the distance are higher. This reachability density distance are higher, so my density would be low. This is not dense cluster, right? As the distance, you can say, decreases, my density will increases. LRD is nothing but local reachability density, some kind of a density. So if point is like, let's say, this very dense, right? So the reachability density, the average reachability density of these 9 points is very less. If average distance is very less, my LRD is high, density would be higher, right? So LRD is high for the dense cluster and LRD is low for the sparse cluster. Yes or no? Yes. So how it is defined is 1 upon average distance. So this formula is wrong here. So if you take the reciprocal, it will look something like this. The total distance B belongs to neighborhood of A, reachability distance from A to B. So what I am doing is, for all the neighborhood point in the B, right? B neighborhood of A. So B is nothing but all the point that belongs to neighborhood of A. I should have used some other letter W or X, something like that. So what I am doing is I am calculating all the reachability density of, let's say I am calculating the density for this point. So what I will do, I will take, let's say, 5 neighbor, and I will calculate the all the sum of all the distance, reachability distance, divided by number of. So this is mode of Na, that is nothing but number of neighbors. So let's say number of neighbors are nothing but 5. So it is reciprocal of average distance, right? It's inverse of average reachability distance. Now, using this density, I am defining my LOF, local outlier factor. So when you will say it is outlier, so let's say I have this kind of a dense cluster and one point is somewhere here, and I have this kind of a sparse cluster and one point is, let's say, somewhere here. And so you cannot say this is outlier, because see, in this cluster the average distance is this much. So how will you identify these two outlier? So what I'll do, first I am taking the average density of my neighbor. What is the average density of my neighbor? First I am calculating this. So B belongs to Na, so all the neighbor. So B is nothing but the neighbor of A, neighbor of A. So this, let's say, these three are neighbor, this three or four are neighbor. Then I'm calculating the local reachability density of B. B is nothing but neighbor, right? B belongs to Na. B belongs to neighborhood. So calculate all the density, average density divided by number of neighbor. So it's nothing but average I'm taking. So let's say the average density for these neighbors, all these neighbor, the average density is, let's say, just 3 multiplied by 1 upon what is the density of me, LRD of A. We are calculating local outlier factor of A. So we are calculating for this point A. So what is the average density? So it would be definitely very less than this, right? Because this belongs to some on this area. What you can call that? This dense area, right? Dense cluster. So the average this density of A would be somewhere around, let's say, 5 or let's say 10, right? So my density, sorry, density would be lower. No, see, density would be lower, right? Because it doesn't belong to dense area. So average density is 3 and the average density of this is nothing but, let's say, 0.1. So local outlier factor would be 30. And if I calculate, let's say, this LOF for this point, then what will happen? The local reachability density of the neighbor, so neighbors are nothing but these points. So the average density is nothing but 3 for all these points, because all belongs to same area, same cluster, same, you can say, country. You can say country or cluster, basically dense cluster, multiplied by the average density of this point. So average density would be around 3 or 2.9, let's say. So it is around roughly equal to 1. So if point doesn't belong to cluster and the neighbor belongs to cluster, then definitely this average value would be low and this value would be also low. Sorry, low. So low divided by, sorry, this the density would be low. Yes. So this low multiplied by 1 upon low is nothing but very, very low. So outlier factor would be higher, right? So we are definitely able to find out the outlier. If it belongs to, you can say, a dense cluster, not outlier, then average density, this value would be nearly equal to this value. So my LOF would be very, very low. Any questions, guys, for this LOF, LRD, and RD, right? And they convert this formula into English sentence and ask in the MSQ. So local outlier factor is I don't know like how they put them that, but somewhat they'll write this equation in English, basically. Average local reachability density of the point multiplied by inverse of LRD, or local reachability density of a point, right? Any questions, guys? Any doubt in this outlier detection?
What is K again? K is just a number, 5, 4, equals of 1,
Here, no, k distance. Yes, yes, yes. K is just a number. Yes. Uh, Next is curse of dimensionality. So see, there is one huge, you can say, phenomenon. So what use is saying is, so this is like very, you can say, high level English, but in simple word, what it is saying is, as the, you can say, dimensionality increases, the same, you can say, to same performance. Let's say you want to have 95% performance, right? Then the number of data point you will need in 3D and number of data point you need in 30D, 30 dimension. So as the dimension increases, the number of data point that you need to represent or to perform, like for that same performance, the number of data point increases exponentially. So as you increase dimension one by one linearly, one plus one plus one plus one, it will increase exponentially, right? So this nothing but the huge phenomenon, right? This English, like I left it for you to read. Hyperspectral narrow bands of the number of samples, like this training pixel, and this, right? So this is like main thing, statistical confidence that you will get, right? And the functionality basically, that for that data for classification purpose grows exponentially, right? So it makes very difficult basically, correct? And there is one more phenomenon: as the dimension increases, the distance like become useless, Euclidean distance become useless. In PDF, I guess they written that the maximum distance between 2 point is as similar as minimum distance between 2 point, and they both are not equal, like that, right? So it is like very hard to, you can say, interpret or get intuition. But in higher dimension, it happens that everything is consolidated at a single point, like that, right? uh, so basically the simple Euclidean distance become useless, right, in higher dimension, the moral of the story. uh, Last one, okay. Sometimes it's possible that you don't have simple, you can say, table, or you can say feature value, that feature one, feature two, feature three, but you get a similarity matrix between two feature, right? So you get something like kind of a pivot, that feature one and feature two. So how much similar it is, or if they say like how much you can say different it is, it's nothing but the distance matrix. And how similar these two features are, if they are saying, if this table is representing that, then it's called the similarity matrix. So distance is nothing but one upon similarity, right? Inverse of each. Right? So if you have something like this, then some algorithm will work, some won't. So if you have distance matrix, KNN definitely can work, right? Because it needs either similarity or distance. If I have similarity, I can just take one upon similarity, and I will get the distance. Once I have distance, I can use the KNN, right? So distance or similarity matrix, sometimes like you will have this kind of a data, not in form of the tabular form, but in matrix form, similarity matrix form, right? Okay, so this and one more adhyay, or you can say one chapter, data handling in ML. So by this time we have completed this thing. Let me open that. Okay, this will work. Index basically I'm talking about. So tiny URL. I want to put that revision planner on this device. Huh. So in machine learning, we completed this NLP, BOW, TF-IDF, word2vec, then this KNN, cosine similarity, LSH, right? Then Euclidean LSH, then this performance measurement also we completed, accuracy, TNR, FNR, R square, MAD, and the cases of machine learning algorithm. We also completed this. Right now, this K distance, LOF, LRD, interpretability, bias variance trade-off, right? Now we will start with the core. Now we have like six, I guess: naive bias, logistic regression, linear regression, one, two, three, four, decision tree, random forest five, and that gradient boosting six. And yes, I guess we are done. Gradient boosting is, I guess, the last topic. Then these are okay. ADA boost we have, I guess, XG boost and ADA boost, but it is just kind of intuition, like not very depth in depth we have. then staking, cascading, like these two are topic, these two are method that is very much useful in Kaggle competition, but not in real world mostly. So these two topic. Okay. And how many days we have? Today and tomorrow, right? uh, UOH course weekly planner. Okay. So let's start with the naive bias. I was just able to get, just a second. Let me open this thing. Huh. Luckily, I have notes for just naive bias, and after that, I have handwritten note. So you need to bear with my handwriting. But for this, we have this written notes. For subject three, like due to like unplanned vacation and all of this, those stuff, I was not able to make the notes basically. So let's start with our first algorithm. Basically, after doing all of this mathematics and everything, now this machine learning starts, right? We were waiting for this day basically. Not know, but I was waiting for this days, like when we will learn this machine learning algorithm. So first, very simple or sometime baseline model you use is nothing but naive bias, right? So sometimes like when like designing some machine learning algorithm or something, what you will do, you will decide on baseline model. Let's say naive bias, simple model KNN, right? Weighted KNN or naive bias. So naive bias is like a favorite model of all. Like naive bias will be used as the baseline. What is baseline? Let's say naive bias is performing 85%, right? Now this is my baseline. I cannot go beyond that, right? Then definitely use naive bias. What's the problem? Now I will do all my exercise, all of my hard work to get the accuracy like at least 95, right? If you are getting 96 or 97, just go with the naive bias. Now it's very easy, just counting, nothing else. Probability, simple probabilistic approach, Bayesian method, right? So naive bias is very useful for the baseline models, and it was used like in the spam detection algorithm like for decades basically, right? Uh, just a second, I will need that Excel also if I have it handy. So just a second, give me a second. Subject 3, XLS notes, machine learning algo. Okay, so this we will need. Okay, so how naive bias works is it works on the conditional probability. So given data set x1, x2, x3, xn, so this is nothing but my in data set and one feature, right? So what basically we are doing is, given the observation that the person is female, say is working, right? She is working professional, she has this credit score, she has this value. So given this feature, we want to predict some you can say dependent variable, right? Like what is the probability, or not the probability, like if she will take this health insurance or not. Let's say you're insurance company and you're selling the insurance, so you want to predict if she will opt for this insurance or not, one or zero, right? So given all the data, what we do is we first calculate the probability. So this is the nothing but the core of naive bias. So the probability of y, so the probability of y, that means 1 or 0, if she will opt for let's see, or he will opt for this thing or not. Let me remove this. Okay, if she or he will opt for insurance or not, 1 or 0, given this observation x1, x2, x3. So what are these observation? Age, gender, right? Credit score, bank balance, if you have like access, or average bank balance, like that, correct? So given this feature, what is the probability of 1 and 0? It's proportional to probability of y, that is nothing but the prior probability, right? So this like given the training data set, let's say you have 1000 you can say yes and 500 no, right? So like there is high chances that you will say, you will see like yes, right, rather than no, because prior, like right in beforehand, like one is like having higher weight than zero. So this is the prior probability, and I will multiply with probability of xi given y. So for each feature I will calculate the likelihood. So what likelihood is saying? So x1 can be a feature, so all these features, see, pi. So this pi looking symbol, this product goes from 1 to n. So I will check x1 given y. So what is x1 given y? Let's say I am calculating, let's say for 1, that they say yes for insurance, right? Some new insurance. So what's the probability of that person being, let's say, male, given given he or she opts for male, right? So he opts for insurance, right? Then I will take the one more feature, x2. What's the probability of that probability that age is greater than 45, or age is 45, given the probability, sorry, given that he opted for the insurance, right? Given for the y. So what we are doing is, to identify if it is 1 or 0, we will go into the data and check, like if we have like matching, you can say, input or not, right? For each x basically. So for each x we are calculating the probability for that class. Right? So what is the likelihood, right? How likely it is that if the age is 45, he will opt for insurance. What is the probability that given the gender is female, he will not choose the insurance and then choose the insurance? So what we are doing is, for all the value of y, 1 0 1 0 1 2, multiple category also you can have, right? So naive Bayes definitely can work on multi-class also, right? Just y will change 1 2 3. So after doing all of this stuff, I will find out the argmax y. So what argmax y is saying, what is, say, y is nothing but the category that we are trying to find out, right? Yes or no? So for yes, I will calculate this product py multiplied by this naive Bayes formula. So it's nothing but the answer probability of yes given input, and then I will calculate one given input, then zero given input. So whatever the probability I get, let's say for given this input xi, the probability of yes is 80% and probability of no is 40%, right? So that I will get as y hat. Y hat is nothing but predicted value. So my y hat would be equal to 1, because argmax y. So like for which value of y I am getting maximum value of this function, right? So the for the y equal to 1, I am getting the maximum value of this function. That value is nothing but y hat. So y hat would be 1, right? So how to calculate naive Bayes? Calculate all this probability first for different value of y, 1 0 2 3, right? It is like whatever the categories you have in the dependent variable. Then find out for the which value of y you are getting the highest answer. That is nothing but your prediction. Spam or not spam, one or not, sorry, play or not, play tennis or not, play golf or not, right? And this likelihood probability given the likelihood, or you can say the distribution of xi, or your is this feature value is like different. So this probability of xi given y is like the formula for this can be different depends on the distribution of xi, right? So if my xi is distributed Gaussian, right, then it's nothing but Gaussian naive Bayes, 1 upon sigma 2 pi sigma y square. So this is variance, and 1 by 2. I guess this formula is wrong, right? It should be exponential minus 1 by 2. No, it's fine. Yes, yes, yes. Xi minus mu divided by sigma whole square. Okay, we can write this way also, right? And if my the xi is nothing but column, right? If you think intuitively, x1, right, the first value, or you can say the age value. So you have age column. So how age is distributed? So if it is Gaussian is distributed, so it's Gaussian naive Bayes. All your features are distributed Gaussian. So it's Gaussian naive Bayes. And if these features are, let's say, distributed Bernoulli 1 or 0, if it can take value 1 or 0, 0, it's nothing but Bernoulli naive Bayes, right? So this likelihood is calculated based on this thing, the distribution basically. And mostly we are using is multinomial naive Bayes. If something is saying simple naive Bayes, like by default, it he or she is referring to multinomial naive Bayes, right? It was not included in our class. We just saw just a binary, like binary form of naive Bayes, but mostly naive Bayes, like all, if someone is saying naive Bayes, like by convention it's multinomial naive Bayes. More than one variable you can have, right? Enough of theory, let's take example, and I took it in the.
So just to add one point that
Sure.
multinomial naive Bayes is very useful for text related data.
Text related,
Yeah,
you're saying?
like,
Yes.
yeah, for like let's take Amazon reviews, like most one, like you will have input as a
Huh.
text.
Correct.
So you will use mostly multinomial. Like for any text data, it's good to use multinomial.
Correct. Because it's like the state, or you can say the number of category for each feature would be like very much higher, right? Even see, this is also multinomial naive Bayes. You can say this thing example, right? Because I am having so much of feature, one, two, three, four feature, and why multinomial naive Bayes? Because see, I cannot just say that. The probability that the observing of deer is 1 by number of times a deer is there, right? Can I say that the probability of like seeing deer word in my mail is nothing but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 divided by some value. How many are there? Count is 12. 6 by 12. Can I say that? No. The probability of deer is nothing but 6 by the total number of words you have in your mail. Correct? I do not count that in how many mail I have deer and how many mail I don't have deer, right? So these are nothing but my 12 mail, different mail, right? Email basically, right? And I am just taking 4 words. It could be more than 4 words, right? 40, 50, 100 also. So the our example, in this example, what we are doing is, this is our training data, right? And after removing all the stop words and everything in these 12 emails I have, I just have just 4, you can say, different word, distinct word I have, unique words out of 12 emails, right? Just for simplicity. And category is nothing but spam or not spam. So this is nothing but doing by some human, right? So this is ground truth. So if I have dear friend, if the mail is dear friend, it's not spam. Friend money sell, it's spam. Just dear, not spam. Like this. Friend, not spam. Dear friend money, not spam. Like this. Correct. So this is the training data. Now I want to, let's say, use the naive Bayes. Right. And this is very favorite of the paper setter, because like in all exam we had one question at least from naive Bayes. Right. So how to like approach the naive Bayes first? So naive Bayes, see, we have just two categories, spam or not spam. So we will calculate the probability of spam given mail, right? In testing, what we will do in testing phase, what we will do, the probability of y given xi, x, right? X1, x2, x3. So what first I am saying is, what is the probability that mail is my spam given this mail, right? So this is conditional probability. This mail is already there, dear friend is there. So from this you can directly say it is not spam. But let's see what our algorithm is saying, right? It is saying not spam with the alpha equal to 0. So not spam I'm saying, right? So probability of spam given dear friend is nothing but probability of y. If you remember the formula, prior probability. So what's the prior probability of mail being spam multiplied by probability of x1? So product of xi given y. So xi, x1 is nothing but dear given spam and friend given spam. What is the probability that dear word is used if the mail is spam? What is the probability, conditional probability, that friend word is there given spam, right? So these all probability we will need, right, to calculate this. So first let's calculate all this probability. So this prior probability we need. Similarly for not spam, right? The formula is similar. And this likelihood we need to calculate. So let's calculate the this probability and likelihood. First we will take alpha equal to 0, no smoothing. Then I will explain smoothing and I will take the smoothing also. So likelihood or alpha, let's take first 0, simple. So the prior probability, what is the probability of spam? It is really easy, right? Number of spam, 1 2 3 4 divided by 12, 4 divided by 12, and this is nothing but 8 divided by 12. So this is nothing but the prior probability, right? So at prior, probability of not spam is higher, right? It makes sense because in training data you have like most of the chance you don't have spam, right? Most of the email are not spam. Now let's calculate the prior probability, right? And prior probability we need to calculate for each category. What is the prior probability that deer is there given it is spam, and what is the probability deer is there given not spam? So we need to calculate for both category. Let's find out how we can calculate that. So given feature deer, we have just four feature, right? Dear, friend, money, sell. So given feature deer, how many times I have deer in spam category? First we are calculating for spam, huh? So let me filter out this. So for given spam, I have just two appearance of deer, right? So two. But can I say that what's the probability of deer? So you will say 2 by 4? No, I cannot say 2 by 4. Correct? Because this is word data. See, this likelihood probability, this likelihood calculation change from problem to problem, because this is NLP data. If you want to find out the probability, then the better, or you can say correct approach is nothing but how many times you found out deer divided by total number of words in corpus. Correct? So how many words I have? So 1 1 1 1 1 1 1, it's nothing but 11. So 2 by 11 is nothing but my likelihood. Correct? Not 2 by 4. If it was that tennis example data, outlook, sunny, 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 that temperature is high, medium, or low, then the probability would be 2 by 4. Don't confuse, huh, guys. This is NLP. I'm taking this example from NLP. Right? When we will be solving that example, in that what you can say that in that outlook example, right? We have in mid sem basically that play tennis or not, right? I hope you remember that. In that case the probability would be 2 by 4, right? 2 by 4, not 2 by 11. But in NLP it doesn't make sense 2 by 4, right? We need to calculate the probability by number of time that word is happening divided by total number of words. So what would be the likelihood for friend? It's nothing but the probability 3 by 11, then 3 by 11, 3 by 11. So you get all the likelihood for spam. Similarly for not spam. So I will just change the filter. So for not spam, I have total 4 count, 11114 divided by total number of word I have in not spam category. So it's nothing but 13. So 4 by 13, 7 by 13, 2 by 13, 0 by 13 is 0. Right? So then we will calculate this thing. Let me remove the filter now. Then let's say we are in testing phase. Now the phase is nothing but, let's take this example, friend cell. It is saying, right, friend and cell, right? There is no, like, say in training data we don't have that example. So this is new mail, right? So new mail is nothing but friend cell. So what would be the, what is, if it is spam or not spam? How we will define? How we will determine basically? So the probability of y given x, spam given dear friend, is nothing but the prior probability of spam multiplied by probability likelihood of the friend word given it is spam multiplied by likelihood of word cell given it is spam. Similarly for not spam, likelihood of friend given not spam, likelihood of cell given not spam, and the prior probability of not spam, right? If you observe here, what's happening is this word cell is not there in not spam category, right? So in not spam category the cell word is not used, right? Cell word is not used like anywhere in the not spam, right? Cell word is only used in spam category, right? So the probability or the likelihood of cell is 0, right? So if I have something like this, friend sell like this, right? Dear friend sell, definitely it is spam, right? Definitely it's spam, right? And let's say I have something like this, dear friend please find the attach PDF or something, it is about the cell. It is not spam, but it would be categorized as spam. Every time it would be categorized as spam, right? Because I have word sell there. Why? Because likelihood of sell is nothing but 0. So 0 multiplied by anything, 0 multiplied by even Katrina is 0, right? So whatever the things you take, if you multiply it by 0, you will get 0. Okay, sorry, this is not the example. It is alpha equal to 1. So in this example, see, sorry for the confusion. So if I have word sell, right, then probability of not spam would be always 0, because this is nothing but 0. So 0 multiplied by anything is 0, right? So it won't check for any other letter, or you can say any other words in the mail. If someone like by mistake say it is sell, then it would be categorized as spam, because this probability would be always 0. So this is very big problem, right? In trained data set we should apply Laplace smoothing here. Yes, so this is the right time, my friend, to introduce the Laplace smoothing. Right, so this is the problem, right, in our hand. You need to understand this, right? Because if some word is not there for particular category, right, if some, you can say, feature, or you can say observation is not there in some particular category, the probability would be always 0, because we are using this multiplication term, right? And if you take the log also, then log 0 would be infinite minus infinite, right? So it also doesn't make sense. There is, and see, why we are using log also, right? Because mostly we use log in examination. I guess we are not using logs, we directly use this multiplication. But in real world we use log. Why we use log? Let's say I have 50 features, right? The probability value would be always 0 in 1. So 0. 0.1, 0. 0.02, 0.03. So if I multiplied a very small number, it would be 10 to the power minus 50 or something like that, right? If I 50 feature, right? So it would be 0.00000050 times 0, right? So our computer cannot represent that small number, so it would be underflow error, basically underflow problem, that your architecture cannot represent that small number. It is same as you cannot represent some like very big number, like that. Correct. So if you take log, it would be nothing but log of not spam plus log of not, so multiplication would be converted into summation. Right, so you'll, but it will hold true, right? So if you take log, the result would be similar, spam to spam. But how to overcome this problem, that if word is not there, the probability is always 0, and in log it would be minus infinity. So how to overcome this problem? So what we are doing is we are using the Laplace smoothing. Actually it is called smoothing and not the Laplace smoothing. But in this smoothing problem, if you take alpha equal to 1, it is called Laplace smoothing. If you take alpha less than 0, negative value of alpha, it's called Leadstone smoothing. And if you take alpha greater than 0, there is no particular word, right? So if you take alpha equal to greater than 0, it is used to avoid 0 probability, nothing else, right? So you can take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you take 1, you need to call it Laplace smoothing, nothing fancy, right? So if you take alpha equal to 1, now what I am doing is I am assuming like one more feature for every category. So what I am doing is, if the count of deer is 2, so I am basically adding 1 in the histogram. So I am assuming deer is 3 time, friend is 3 time, 4 time, then 4 4. So I am assuming something like this: 3 4 4 4. Now how will I calculate 3 divided by 3 divided by? So what would be the total? It would be 15. 4 तेरी बार नहीं 15. So how we got this 15? So 15 is nothing but 11 plus alpha is nothing but 1 multiplied by how many category I have? 1 2 3 4. So 11 plus 4 is nothing but 15, because I am adding 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. So 4 into 1, right? So the again, now if I take alpha equal to 1, what would be the likelihood? 3 divided by 15. 0.24 divided by 15, right? So 0.2669. So this number and this number is different, but after 3 decimal places. So you will find out this is similar as this. But if I simply like take like higher, you can say rounding off, then you will notice that difference. So why it's happening like this? Okay, in equation I'm using rounding. That's why. Right. So if I take like more decimal places, then it would be different. 3 by 11 and 4 by 15. So this is nothing but my Laplace smoothing. Just add 1 here. So 2 plus 1 divided by 11 plus 4. So that's the formula. If I now show the formula, that will make sense. NYI, number of data point for that particular observation for class Y, plus alpha. So it's nothing but 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3 divided by total count of all features. It's nothing but 11 plus 1 into how many data point you have, or how many, you can say, uh, features you have. Right. So 4 features. So 1 into 4 is nothing but 4. So 3 by 15 I'm doing basically. So plus alpha and alpha into n, because I'm adding 1 into all my features, all n features, alpha into n. Right. So 2 plus 1, 3 plus 1, 3 plus 1, 3 plus 1. So it's 11 plus 4. Now if I have 0, so I'm adding 1. So 0 plus 1, it's nothing but 1 divided by 17. So 1 divided by 17 I'm having here. See, plus 4 divided by, so, and rounding to 2. So 0.06. So I have very small value, not 0, right? So if I take log, it would be very small value, but not infinity or not 0. Right? So if I take multiplication, the value would be very, very low. So I'm taking the same example. So the value would be very, very low, right? But see, probability is less than this. It's at least not 0, right? So I will decide it's spam. And similarly, if you don't want to do the multiplication and do the summation, you can take log also. Then again, if you take the log, 1 minus 1.7 is less than minus 1.6. So this value is higher. So I will decide it is spam. Right. So the whole idea is nothing but calculate this prior probability, likelihood, multiply it, and find the probability for each class. Class spam, class not spam, class play, class not play. Right. Class positive, class negative. And the higher the probability, that class will win. Right. So here the higher probability is 0.11. So the classification of this mail would be not spam. And so this is the very, you can say, naive, you can say, approach. And why it is called naive bias is because we are taking the assumption that all the features are independent from each other. One feature has nothing to do with other feature, any other feature. Right? I don't know if I have written this or not, but the naive approach is nothing but we are saying all the features are independent from each other. That's why it's called naive bias. But it works like phenomenally. And this spam classification, for decades we were using something like this naive bias, and today I don't know, like they must be using some deep learning techniques. uh,
No. Still, Naviverse works pretty well for text data, and it's very fast.
correct.
Very, very fast.
Yes, because it's just simple counting, right? And all of this C++, or basically all this language are very good with the counting. Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, What next? Okay, so yes, we are good. Like I am happy with the pace now. So the next topic is nothing but logistic regression. But before that, I guess we need to. We should change the order and take the linear regression and that maths first, right? So this is the notes that I did. I delete it. Okay, I don't know if you like it or not due to my this handwriting. Okay. So logistic regression we will take after linear regression, right? So this linear regression is nothing but the simple that say we are seeing this from the subject one also. In the gradient descent, we were using this thing linear regression. The formulation that we were using was linear regression only, right? It is also called ordinary least square method or linear least square method also. In my graduation, I did like mechatronics. So in our last year, we had something called numerical methods, right? So numerical method is nothing but in that we were using this linear regression, but that time we were like calling it ordinary least square method, right? OLS method. And then we had like all of this saying, like if you want to perform integration, how will you do that? If you want to perform this bisection method, basically Newton Raphson method, Runge-Kutta method, all of that method we had. So there we were calling this ordinary least square. It's nothing but the line fitting. I guess Giri Teja had taken the first lecture on this thing also. Only he had like prepared the Python program for the line fitting basically. So there we were able to find out the, or you can say optimal value of W and B, such that this my line like represent this data, this linear you can say relationship. And what I'm doing is my cost function, or you can say my loss, is nothing but the square of this all error. This is nothing but the error I'm making yi minus y prediction, right? So what I'm doing is I am minimizing this error, right? But sometimes this error is positive, sometimes this error is negative, so it's possible that it may cancel out each other. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the square, right? So that's why it's called ordinary least square method. So what I'm doing is I need to take the squares of the error that I'm making while fitting the line given the data. So this is line in 2D. 3D it will be plane. If you go higher dimension, it would be higher hyperplane, right? So what I'm doing is for fitting the hyperplane, like linear hyperplane is always linear, right? So I'm trying to fitting the hyperplane. In the equation of hyperplane is this w1 x1 w2 x2 up to wdxd d dimension hyperplane plus some bias w0. So this is nothing but the bias intercept you can say, right, is equal to 0. So we are fitting this line plane or hyperplane on given data. So this is nothing but my data x, right? And we are predicting y. So whatever the value predicted this by this line is nothing but y hat. So y hat is nothing but whatever the weights I have w1 w2 up to wd multiplied by, or you can say wtxi, or you can say wtx. For let's say for one feature, if I'm talking about one row, it's xi plus w0, or I can write b also, bias or w0, it's same, right? So this is nothing but my predicted value given by my hyperplane w, and this is my input. So what I'm doing, given any input, I will multiply it by w, my this hyperplane, or you can say weights, plus some bias w0. So this is my predicted value. So now what I'm doing is error is nothing but the actual value minus predicted value. So this is the error I'm making. Now what I'll do, I need to minimize the square of the error, right? So I need to find out the optimal value of w star, that is nothing but w1 w2 w3 wd. And so if you take everything as 0 0 0, definitely you are making some mistake, right? So you are making mistake like this mistake, this mistake, this mistake, and so you are making some mistake like this. So you can start at 0 0 0. Now you want to find out some w such that you are making the list error, or I should say list squared error, right? That's why it's called ordinary least square or linear least squares, right? So what I'm doing is minimization problem of w and w0. So I need to find out the value of w and w0, that's nothing but optimal w star and w0 star, so that the summation of all my squared error yi minus y predict square, the total square is minimal, right, plus some regularization loss I'm applying, right? Why is regularization? Because see, it's very easy. If I need to minimize this, I need to maximize this. Sorry, this is square, right? So it doesn't make sense. So if I need to maximize this, I can take simple minus infinity or plus infinity. So if I take plus infinity, so minus infinity like this. So the w value would be very you can say crazy, like in higher dimension the value. See, and also like one now I remember one example given by the Justin, its professor basically in Stanford. So the what he was saying is, if I write something equation like this, 2x plus let's say 3y minus 3 equal to 0, right? So this is, let's say, solution for this line. So it is possible that I can represent this formula as something like this: 2 million x, so 20000 x plus 3 million y minus 3 million equal to 0. So both are doing the same thing, right? Both are the same line. But the value of w here and value of w here is very different, right? This value is very, this is crazy. 2 million, around 2 million, right? And this is 2, and let's say you are taking square somewhere of this w, then this will go crazy, right? So how to let's say regularize your model, that your model should not take the crazy value of w. So you need to apply some penalty to the model. That's why it is called penalty in scikit-learn functions, right? It is not called regularization, it's called penalty L1, penalty L2, like that. So if you now think intuitively, now on the value of w I will apply some penalty, right? And penalty is defined on the value of w. If it's regular L1 regularization, it's nothing but simple mod w. If it is L2 regularization, it's nothing but mod, double mod w, or you can say under root w1 square w2 square up to like that. So if you take 2 and 3, my L1 or L2 would be say small, right? Let's say I am using L1 regularization. So 2 plus 3 is nothing but 5, right? So I am minimizing this, right? So I want to minimize this regularization also, penalty also, right? So 2 plus 3 is 5. Yeah, that's fine. But if my model goes crazy and choose W equal to 2m and 3m, 2 million and 3 million, then my regularization would be 5 million, right? Now I'm minimizing this whole thing. So what would be the solution, right? I'm minimizing this, so I will be forced, or my or machine learning model, or you can say this optimization problem would be forced to choose 2 and 3 over 2m and 3m, 2 million and 3 million. Correct? Now I guess this makes sense, right? What regularization is. Also in logistic regression, if you don't apply this regularization, you can take w equal to infinity and your problem is solved, right? But due to this regularization, this has like very good, and I like the teaching of like Stanford. Basically I was doing that course. I just took like 9 or 10 that you can 10 lectures, but I like the approach. Like at every term, like the professor was doing like going into some deep, you can say, level, and also showing some kind of this thing, what do you call that, animation, or this thing, how to put that, like write some program and so like some animation or something. Correct. So this is the linear regression problem, and how to solve that, we will say this in the optimization problem solving, right? It's around 11:30, but let me finish this. uh, in del w, I guess we have this, that pseudo residual, I guess we have that, or let's somewhere I have this. See, here I have this, and also in that thing we have uh, gradient descent, I guess. In gradient descent also we use this. I'm not sure if I have the notes for gradient descent, because it was already discussed in subject 1. So let me find that if I have. No, I don't have that. So we will see it in direct problem directly. But it's nothing but in gradient descent, my next w is nothing but my previous w plus del L divided by del W. So nothing but del L by del W is nothing but simply the derivation of this equation with respect to W. Right? So it's 2 into minus 2 into yi wt xi plus w0, like that. Right? So we will see that in example directly. Right? So linear regression is nothing but simple line fitting, and we want to find out the optimal w and w0, and the problem is defined something like this: argument of ww0, minimizing this error plus some regularization, l1 or l2, or elastic net also, l1 plus l2, lambda 1 l1 plus lambda 2 l2, like that, right? So in the optimization problem, we have the first is nothing but gradient descent method that we saw in subject 1. So there is, it doesn't make sense to go like repeat that. And they like this was just introduced, like given any optimization problem, we can convert into this linear form, some kind of a linear form, using Lagrangian multiplier. So given this kind of a problem, that constraint optimization basically. So let's say we want to optimize this x star argmax x given some function f of x, and these two are condition that gx is greater than c and hx is sorry, gx equal to c and h of x is greater or equal to d. So we can convert this problem into linear form, something like this, that the L x of lambda in mu. So lambda in mu are nothing but my Lagrangian multiplier. It could be alpha, beta, gamma, delta, anything. So f of x minus lambda into this equation gx equal to c. So it's nothing but gx minus c minus mu d minus h of x. Right? So lambda greater or equal to g and mu greater or equal to 0. Now I will calculate L such that del L by del X, del L by del lambda, and del L by del mu. So all of this Lagrangian multiplier and my variable should be equal to 0. So this was just introduced. I guess we are not using like anywhere other than dual form of SVM. We are using that also, but the derivation is, I guess, out of our context or out of syllabus basically, right? Out of the interest, I must say. And using this Lagrangian multiplier, you can solve PCA problem also, right? And this is also not very intuitive because it is like very deep, very big, you can say, derivation. We are directly assuming something like this: ut s into u. We are just taking s equal to something like this covariance matrix. So this also doesn't make sense. So due to some time constraint, I want to be going like deep into it. So from tomorrow, we will start this logistic regression versus support vector machine. Both are classification method. How both are working? If you compare like one to one, it will make your life easier. Right? What support vector machine is? What's the dual form? So say this, I just wrote today this equation. So due to this, like I do like in mid sem, I had no idea how to solve this because I didn't write this equation 1 to n basically. How to predict the y basically using the dual form. So there was one numerical on this equation also. Alpha was given something like this. So literally, I on my graph paper I put all the point and draw the hyperplane and classify the point. Right. So it worked, but if we know the formula, life would be easier. Then this kernel optimization. So definitely tomorrow we'll try to finish logistic regression, SVM, and intro to decision tree if possible. Right. So I guess we are on time. Today is just Tuesday. So Wednesday. So by tomorrow we should be able to finish this, right? Thursday and Friday we should take the numericals. So let's see if we are able to finish last four methods tomorrow. Right? Half hour each, basically. Any questions, any doubt, or anything? Tomorrow, today's session